It's my great honor to be here. As a graduate student, I always like watching these seminars. I never thought one day I would also be one of the person who give a talk. But that's cool. So uh, today I will talk about the recent project I did uh, about we want to compare the different performance across the different earthquake location programs, and it's built upon a synthetic control experiment. This work is supported by SCAC, and SCAC is funded by the NSF and the USGS. And also, when I was carrying out this research, because I need to run lots of location programs, the authors of the programs I'm using, for example, Anthony Lomax, Guoqin Lin, Daniel Trachman, Zach Ross, and Felix Waterhouse are all helped me to make it correct. So I would like to acknowledge them all. Okay, let's get started. So the structure of this talk would be I will first introduce the basic concepts, then I will dive into a detail about how we build this synthetic data set, and talk about the results, the discussions, the lessons learned from this experiment, and the conclusion. First is about the location. So I think the earthquake location is a fundamental cornerstone in seismology. It's so many other branches of research are built upon this precise locations. For example, the earthquakes, the monitoring, the sequence, the fault identification, or also like induced earthquakes. They all these researches are based upon the precise locations. Also, the human activities like the nuclear monitoring or other activities also can be done by just precise locating those signals. Also for the volcano and more about the environmental part, all of them, the events would generate some signals, and we can precisely locate them. That would be very helpful for understanding the process, understanding the mechanisms. So for this audience, also I think the providing the event location is also one of the main tasks for the network monitoring, because you need to generate lots of catalog routinely, so which is very beneficial for different researchers, for government, for different interest people. So this is one of the, for example, one of the catalog I just take a screenshot this morning from USGS earthquake latest earthquake map. So it seems there's yesterday there's a big event happened in Alaska, but this is very beneficial. And but earthquake location is also is important, and it seems it's a kind of where started problem. It's like the example problem, I would say the inverse problem 101 or seismology 101. When we take those classes, always take this out as an example to get a taste about what the inverse problem is. So in this talk, I would focus on the arrival time-based earthquake location problems. There are also other types like waveform based. I would not talk about that and focus on the arrival time-based. For this type of problem, what we are doing is we set up we collect the arrival time from the surface of the Earth. From the stations, we deploy it, and build up. Then we formulate the problem by thinking about the wave propagation problems. And if we assume the Earth structure, the velocity structure, if we have good station coverage to provide the enough constraint of this nonlinear inverse problem, we can use the accurate arrival time to invert to estimate where the hypocenter is. So it seems it's a well formulated problem. And recently, the advances it started like almost more than 100 years ago from those Geiger's method, from manually measure the p minus s time, something like that. Then there's more and more like numerical methods coming out, and the way to calculate this have been updated dramatically, but the challenges remain similar in this problem. The challenges are mostly about our limited understanding of the structures. So, for example, in this figure, I'm showing the Ridgecrest, the Ridgecrest region, which is the case study in our synthetic experiment. There are some the blue triangles are the stations from the Southern California earthquake data center, and these dots are the detected events in those catalogs. So you can see there's in this region, for example, in Ridgecrest, there are complex geology correlated with the elevations, right? So they are like a high elevation of granite mountains and some sediment basins, and they also correlated with the seismic velocity structures. So clearly showing this figure. This would all cause some errors or some misfit into our inverse problem in causing some challenges to solve in these location estimation problems. And also there are some, like the network geometry is always not that perfect design because we don't know where the sequence is going to happen. So and there are so many constraints on how to select where to deploy the seismometers. And the last but not least, is the measurement of arrival time. There are also always some peaking errors, even though no matter is machine learning picker or the human experts, there are always some errors in the arrival time picking. So to overcome these challenges, there are so many different algorithms to locate earthquakes. They can basically be characterized into two type of. One is a single event, and for the single event is you treat the events like individually one by one. And so there's for this type of location methods, there's iterative methods and grid search based programs like NonLinLoc and HypoSVI. Another type is a relative location. So you treat the clusters instead of individually. You have a cluster of events, and you locate them together. Oh, there's a typo here. So it's L1 norm is a GrowClust, L2 norm is the HypoDD. Sorry about this typo. And but since all the programs that kind of use 1D velocity model, it's not able to capture the 3D, for example, the complex geology I have shown before. So they were always thinking about some ways to mitigate this effect. So that's why there are some design corrections coming along, like static station terms, or even more complicated, the source-specific station terms. So these are some features that are already implemented into some of the programs. But since there are so many location programs available, there comes the question is, which one suits my job? Which one, like I want to do some research on for specific sequence, which one should I use? And for network monitoring, which one should you guys running the network using? That was a question to think about. And especially there are sometimes, for example, there are sometimes in different locations, there are some discrepancies. So for example, this was from a paper like they trying to locate the earthquake in a volcano, I think, and they run different location programs, and it seems there are some kind of features. For example, in HypoDD, you might interpret some lineation here, but in some locations there might not be. And for the depth, it's more, there are also different type of structures. So we need a realistic experiment. We need some experiment with some ground truth data to assess the performance of different algorithms for estimating location and how they quantify the uncertainty. So we are not the first group of people doing that. There are different type of experiment already being carried out. For example, in the Rock Valley fault zone in southern Nevada, there was a Rock Valley experiment. So what they did in this paper from Pyre et al., they did a direct comparison of the 7 shallow earthquake with some the explosions in this comparison. But this comes the problem is a common problem actually from the control explosion or quarry blast. I think is one, it was too shallow, and the event steps are normally very shallow. They are not like in a natural earthquake, you could come down to like a 10-kilometer depth, but for the control explosion or quarry blast, it's very hard to do that. And it's not applicable to broader settings. You can do it in Nevada, but it might be face some challenge when you want to do it in Bay Area, in LA, right? And previously in that experiment, they only focused on 7 events. But so it comes with a challenge is how can we evaluate the performance of relative location programs, because they locate events by class, forming clusters. You cannot form a cluster with only 7 events. It's not convincing. And the explosions are expensive. So we think the synthetic computational experiment should be a more proper way to do it. We can create a benchmark dataset with some non-locations, and these non-locations we can put everywhere we want, serve as a benchmark to compare with, and we can try to build up as realistic as possible the complex 3D velocity structures. We can consider lots of effects that could impact the location results. Then we run the location algorithms and compare with the ground truth with the benchmark locations. So before I talk about how we did it, there is also, I would like also talk about the others' work that also inspired our workflow. So in 2005, when Lin and Scher proposed the SSST, the source station specific term, they did some simple comparison. But this one only compare the algorithm of double difference and the source station specific term instead of running the whole program. And what they're doing, even though it is a quite heterogeneous model, the ray tracing is still done in homogeneous model. They just change the velocity along the path. They didn't do more ray tracing than that. More recently, there was some scientists from NORSA. They are focusing on the Groningen gas field. So they set up, they want to understand if the earthquake location is precise. So they set up also similar synthetic experiment. But this setting was more like the underground monitoring. They have a monitoring wheel like this, and they only test the objective function formulation. So it's about testing about the octatree, like the sampling method, and the testing about the least square or the EDT loss method. So it's not that widely applicable. So, but build upon this, we think about we build up a workflow like this. So we would sample some realistic earthquake distribution from the Ridgecrest sequence from the Southern California Earthquake Data Center, and all the station distributions are the same with those available in Southern California. And to build up a velocity structure, I will talk about later in the detail about how we build it with the community velocity model plus some von Karman heterogeneous perturbations. Then we calculate the arrival time. Then we build up the synthetic benchmark dataset, and finally we run this 8 location programs individually, and then we can compare the results with this benchmark dataset. And before I talk about the detail how I build up the workflow, I would like to first clarify 2 things, accuracy and precision, because as the title I've shown is accuracy and precision. So accuracy is more in this work we are referring to the absolute locations. So it's like the difference between the inverted results with the real location. And this is kind of more important for monitoring task. You really need to know where exactly it happened. But in some of the part of the like further research, some researchers care more about the precision. This is kind of a metric for the relative locations. We are kind of thinking about how the structures are preserved, and it's important for like a fault geometry, those things. So this is the difference when we refer to accuracy and precision. So to set up the as I described before, the workflow the first important part is set up a forward problem. So we need to calculate a synthetic arrival time database. For the most important thing, I think, would be the 3D velocity structure. So we built it from based upon the SCAC community velocity model. This was a very useful tool hosted in the now statewide California Earthquake Center website. And then because this community velocity model mostly come from the full waveform inversion, so it's like heavily damping. There's some damping factor in it, so it's mostly long wavelength feature. Then we add some von Karman perturbation, and so this is the scale of the model we are using. So we are also considering elevation effect. So speaking of the von Karman perturbation model, it's kind of the goal is to capture some short wavelength feature, because as I said, the community velocity model is like from this figure here, you can clearly see. So the SCAC, the orange line, is from the community velocity model. Is this is the power spectrum of the velocity model. So it was lots of lots of features in the long wavelengths, but it decays faster in the short wavelengths. So, but the von Karman model is instead we compensate some of the short wavelength features, and then we combine them together. So this was also another visual example of a profile in a 5 kilometer depth, I think. But I'm sorry about the color scale. So the color scale here is like compared with the average seismic velocity in this depths. And there are some, but in von Karman model is just a way to capture the short wavelengths, like those scaling effect, those add some more heterogeneous into our model. The next thing we consider is the elevation effect, as I have shown at the beginning of this talk. In the Ridgecrest region, is the elevation contrast is kind of huge. You have very high granite mountain and some basin, and it's correlated with the velocity, seismic velocity. So we want to compensate for that. We want to build a geologically realistic velocity model. And the SCAC community model only cuts off at 0 elevation. So what we did is we kind of based on Brocher 2008 their paper about the velocity decrease. So it's a kind of an important empirical relations. The velocity, seismic velocity decrease with elevation, and is in different slope if it's a granite or sediment rock. So what we did is we, based on the velocity here, for example, if the velocity is much lower, it's like, for example, in this region, we would classify this as sediments, and this region would be classified as granite, and then we extrapolate the velocity based on elevation and with a different slope. Okay, now we have a reasonable velocity model. So the next thing is we did is calculate travel time. So this was we use a package developed by others. It's called PyKernel. It's kind of useful kernel function based retracing fast matching methods based travel time calculator. The last thing we did is we add some error into our data, because it's not a perfect world, so there must be some errors in the picking data. We also add some outliers. So the picking error is assumed following the Laplacian distribution, which is kind of widely observed in those observational seismology field. And not every stations, even though we are using the available stations from the Southern California earthquake data center, but only like 2/3 of the station would have P phase, and only half of the stations would have S phase. So this is random, and we add some percentage of the outliers into our dataset. So now we have a benchmark synthetic arrival time dataset with the non-ground truth where the location would be. And the next step is to test the 8 location programs I listed here. But before doing that, there was a confusing part I want to explain a little bit. So it's about this step. Because so this 1D velocity structure, it means we have because it's based on Ridgecrest, there are lots of 1D velocity profiles people using for Ridgecrest sequence. And I'm using one from David Shelley's paper in 2020, I think. But since this is a synthetic velocity model, so it might have some difference with the velocity. So we are using the VELEST as an association and the velocity inversion step. So this run of VELEST is separate from this one. So people will kind of get confusing seeing this. But this one is just serving as an association type step, because we have lots of arrival time, but we don't have the origin locations, right? You don't have an origin location to start with running these programs. So the first round of VELEST will do that, and since VELEST can invert for the velocity structure, we will use David Shelley's velocity structure into the first round of VELEST to invert a more applicable 1D velocity profiles based on the 3D velocity model we produced before. And then we use this 1D velocity model to run all the 8 programs. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you how to run the 8 location programs. It's tricky and it's lots of work to do. If you have ever tried any of them, it's pretty hard, I have to say. But with the author's help, I did run 8 of them. And I think that's the most challenging part of this research. And then I'm going to show you the results. But to show you results, it's kind of messy because it's lots of dot clouds like this. So I will show you in this way. This is a true location. This is the results from Hypoinverse, for example. So I will show you a map wheel, and there will be a histograms, is log scale showing the error. So in map wheel, it will be horizontal error. In a depth profile is a profile around this line, like a diagonal line almost. And it will show you some false structures. So for example, let's start here with the single event location programs, and is iterative method based. So they are mostly likely, they are Geiger's method. So they iteratively updates the location in each iteration and have some cutoff threshold to stop updating and use as a final results. It's the VELEST and Hypoinverse. So it's hard to look at details, but from histograms it's more useful. Most of the errors are within like 2 kilometers in map wheel and 3 kilometers in the depth profile, but most of them are about 1 kilometers in the error. And if we look at the depth profile, you will clearly see there are 2 dots. So we believe this is outliers we added into the events, and they all fail to correct them, right? If they don't have a filter mechanism to correct for them, so the outliers are still there. Clear, because in this, running of VELEST, the maybe major difference is the VELEST can update the velocity structure to make the results better, and it can also do some station corrections. That's why we think for this term, because for this cluster is kind of far away, like somewhere here, I think, that is further away. So the station coverage is not that good, right? Because it's on the edge of our study area. But clearly, the VELEST did a better job to capture the structure of this cluster compared with the Hypoinverse and these true locations. The next 3 programs are research based. So they will kind of use different sampling method and different objective functions, but the goal is to minimize the likelihood function and try to locate. And I think most of you might hear about the NonLinLoc, and NonLinLoc SST is a recent version. It's enabled the source station specific term. HypoSVI is a new program. It's more like a machine learning based, but it's more like the optimization scheme, the optimization strategy proposed for machine learning, but the authors apply them into the screen location because it's kind of similar to a similar optimization problem. But it seems the errors, if you from histograms, is slightly smaller than the iteration-based programs before. But I would like you to focus on the NonLinLoc and the NonLinLoc SSST for this cluster. Clearly, compared with the true location, the correction terms make a difference. The structure here are much better than the NonLinLoc here, right? And if we focus on another cluster, like this cluster at the edge, there are still some outliers. And HypoSVI, probably because the HypoSVI requires some training. It's like those machine learning model, you need to train the model. So it seems might be because this cluster is also again at the edge. It's not the kind of accounts for the majority of the training data. They haven't seen this type of data before. So at the edge, there might be some uncertain errors in the this cluster compared with NonLinLoc or NonLinLoc SST. But I have to say, the NonLinLoc did a very good job to correct for this to get the results for these clusters at the edge. The last programs results I would like to show you is three relative location programs: HypoDD, GrowClust, and XCORLOC. It is interesting to see that the outliers in HypoDD and XCORLOC are kind of corrected. They are probably because in the when I add because it's kind of where started that the cross correlation data has less error than arrival time. So when I add the picking error into the differential arrival time, it has less the scale parameter in Laplacian distribution is smaller compared with the travel time based. So, but it fits the way we did it in observational seismology, because when you do cross correlation, the error is smaller. The good thing is the good news is the scale of the histograms are different, right? Here, if you look at the x-axis in the histograms, so the relative location programs, all of them would improve the precision or and accuracy to another level. That's what we have been seeing in the location results. So it's not surprising. They will do a better job in capturing all the structures. And from even not only this part, even this part of structures not much clear in all of these programs, and they have a much less errors in both horizontal and the depths. Okay, so but overall it's hard to to summarize, but I will show you a table later. But before I show you a table, there was another metric. We can calculate the precision and accuracy error based on location, but there's another interesting metric that is widely used in the computer vision field. It's like the point cloud. If you want to compare the point cloud in an image, so the point cloud is also like the earthquake events in a catalog. You can do is you can calculate the chamfer distance. So the chamfer distance is like the average of the distance between the events in one catalog and to the nearest event in another catalog. So here is an example of this. So I don't want to dive deep in the detail about the chamfer distance, but this offers another metric we can measure about the similarity of the catalog, which is quite useful in our case. So this is a table we summarized. So we have a chamfer distance here. This is accuracy. This is a precision. So this is a median, and this is a mean. So overall, if we use the 1D model, it seems overall the feature is for precision, all the relative location programs are much better than a single event based. That's what we expected. And surprisingly, for the median accuracy error, HypoSVI seems did a pretty good job. So their optimization strategy seems working to keep the median error low. And one thing very surprising to me is the VELEST did a very good job in the depths, because we know that constraining the earthquake depths is very hard. It's a hard problem in this type of inverse problem. You don't have enough coverage. You only have the stations deployed on the surface. But overall, this provides a summary of the performance we found, and not only the location accuracy or precision matters, the uncertainty also matters, because you always see people running, especially now with all the machine learning enabled earthquake detection workflow. It seems very easy for anyone if you want to build up a catalog giving lots of data, and they would rely on the uncertainty output of their location programs to convince others their results are kind of accurate. But we know uncertainty estimation is actually a very hard problem in inverse problem generally. There are So in different location programs, they are using different approaches. You can do bootstrapping, that's what GrowClust and XCORLOC did. And for NonLinLoc and HypoSVI, those great search-based because they already form a likelihood function. They can get the uncertainty from the likelihood function. For those more traditional way, the way to do it is form a covariance matrix. And when we want to compare it, is the challenge we face is because they are using different method. So error output is not with the same metric across different programs. So what we are doing is we set up a strategy. So we all convert the uncertainty into the 95% confidence interval. And we also similar with the accuracy and precision, because accuracy is just the location difference between results and the ground truth. So that was the hypocenter. So we compare if this results plus the 95% confidence interval, the ground truth is within this range or not. For event pairs, because precision is more about the structures preserved. So what we did is we form pairs of events, and because if you form pairs of events, you can also based on the 95% confidence interval, you can also form a larger confidence interval that the two events should both be within there, or the distance between the two events, the pair of the events should be within the range, a certain range. That's how we did this uncertainty analysis. So it seems most of the programs underestimate the uncertainties. That's what underestimate the error. I think that's not surprising, even though it's they underestimate a lot. It seems because after all, uncertainty estimation is hard, is challenging. But for the event pairs, because when we form the pairs, it's like a covariance. You kind of sum up the confidence interval, make these intervals much larger. I think that's a reason some of them are much larger, because we expect 95%, and apparently some of them are more than 95%, but still most of them underestimate. So we hope this could provide like a hint or a warning to the users that sometimes the uncertainty or the error estimation of the program's output are not that reliable. You still need to do more kind of quality control of some of verification to convince your location results are that precise. The the next thing we find very interesting is, so this was a result from the HypoDD's results. If we overlap with the ground truth, there was a two obvious difference, so kind of separates by the two part of the region in the middle. In this part, it seems HypoDD recover most of the structures, but in the other part, in this part, the HypoDD seems to have a systematic shift. Like every events are located like 1 kilometer shallower in HypoDD. So then it might be because two reasons: the station coverage or the velocity structure. And we find out after some digging into this, we believe it's mostly likely because of the velocity structure. Because we plot so the black line here is the 1D structure used in the program, and the gray lines here are the because we have our own 3D velocity model, so we can put the 1D slice, take the slice out. So apparently in this part, when it matches each other, is the velocity 1D velocity structure is more representative than the other part, right? There's clearly a deviation in the shallow part in this region, the 1D velocity structure we used and the 3D velocity. So we think apparently in some cases the 1D velocity model cannot approximate the 3D model, but when it reasonably approximates the 3D model, the location would be accurate. So how can we overcome this effect? As I have shown before, apparently the station term or some correction term would provide a very useful way to kind of overcome these challenges. And we did this also. This was also a suggestion from the reviewer, because we understand that in seismic network monitoring, it's very hard. It's kind of hard to do double difference relocation or like differential time-based relocation. So another way to overcome all those challenges is to enable the station term. What we did a simple test. So we input, because the VELEST can invert the station terms, but Hypoinverse cannot. But Hypoinverse can accept the station correction terms. And I think Hypoinverse is widely used in different seismic network. What we did is we used the station correction term inverted from the VELEST, and we input into Hypoinverse. And apparently, then we run Hypoinverse again with the station correction term, the results improved a lot. So I think this was very useful for the seismic network monitoring scenario. Given the abundance of the data you have, you can build up a station correction term for each stations. I would say it takes some work, but it shouldn't be that challenging. And it would improve the results a lot, apparently. And the next thing is, even though the clearly we saw that if you do we see that if you do a differential time-based relocation, it would improve results a lot. And there are some ongoing work by Felix Waterhouse et al. They can build up a real-time double difference catalog, and this is a workflow they built. It seems it would improve the location much better, give you a much better location results. So after this, we have to, because this is a purely synthetic computational method. So for me personally, as a student, I would think this project is very good learning opportunity for me. I learned how to use so many different programs, even from the calculator, the travel time, from those things. So, but overall, this project seems is a assembly of all existing advanced in different field of the seismology, and I was just assemble them together and run this experiment. So that's why this project, the limitation is constrained by our understandings and by how can we model this. We didn't consider the either vertical or horizontal discontinuities, which is apparently existing in the crust. And we didn't consider low velocity layers. We didn't consider fault damage zones. And as I've shown before, the von Karman model is the short wavelength heterogeneity. Community velocity model is long wavelength. We are missing the intermediate wavelength heterogeneity in our model. And it would be really interesting to see if we can change the station geometries, because there are some work like John Gomberger in 1990 or 1995 already had done some finding, like the distance between the source and the stations is important to help understanding the depths, those things. That would be interesting to explore that in the similar workflow. And since waveform modeling is another complex thing, but it's very interesting if we could do it. Even though I know in that field there's still some ongoing work, like how to make it very high frequency enough to do this. There might be some future work if we find out there was if you know there is a very easy to use, very fast waveform calculator, like the PyKernel, the iKernel function travel time calculator I use. You can just replace that and use that with a waveform. That would be more interesting because you can also compare the picking, the association, those things. The last thing I want to say before the conclusion is the interesting part is this work. Surprisingly, it has some fast impact because this work is done last year, and already lots of people are using this as a benchmark to test their new location programs. So this was like a leaderboard of a table. I'm very happy to see that. For example, Weichang Zhu proposed a new location method called ADLoc. Is based on a random sample consensus called ransack algorithm. This algorithm is basically outlier detection. So it will randomly sample the data you are using for this inverse problem and kind of find out which data is outliers, and it will exclude outliers to improve your results. So apparently, as you see here, so the 1 second, 2.2 second are the outlier threshold he choose in the programs. So clearly, if you remove the outliers, the performance increased a lot, and that was kind of surprising, not surprising, but that shows when we add the outliers into this experiment is valid, is useful. So it's also like two-way verification, I think, but it shows outliers are kind of a problem in square locations, I would think. And another paper is by my group member Ian McBeardy. It's based on another location programs based on a graph neural network. So he built up a station graph, source graph, and by minimizing the double difference loss functions, this neural network could locate the results. And it seems it's also achieve very promising results in our testing dataset here. So so we would happy to see this work serve as a benchmark dataset. It can also be a platform for how to use location programs. For example, NonLinLoc SSST is very hard to use. But we make for all the 8 location programs, I put how I use it, all my scripts into my GitHub repo. And I already saw lots of people have been starting looking at this scripts to learn how to use it. For example, this one NonLinLoc SST is hard, but we have some example here that would be very useful, I think. So so this is the conclusion. We built up a synthetic computational experiment, and it shows the benefit of the differential time-based location programs and the station correction terms. And we found out most programs underestimate uncertainties. 1D velocity structure sometimes will be limited to represent the real situation, but station correction might be the way to overcome this barrier. And as I will show, the workflow, this synthetic test is not hard, would not take much time to run for a different scenario. What you need, after all, is just the with 3D velocity model or realistic 3D velocity model, right, to represent the different regions. So I think it can be easily migrated to a different region than Ridgecrest if you have a 3D velocity model from like a full waveform inversion. I believe there are tons of them out right now. And it can also be done in local, regional, tiny seismic scale, I think. And to facilitate that, all the code about how did I build up the velocity model, how I run them, are all in my GitHub page. And this, if you're interested, this paper was published in SIL. You can take a look. And thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take any questions.